district first. Earlier this year, board members reached consensus about the format of board meetings. Tonight's meeting is a work session, which is public, but does not provide time for public comment. Work sessions provide board members a time for deeper and more thoughtful discussions. Due to inclement weather, several agenda items will need to be pulled and rescheduled for either the March 9th board meeting or a future board meeting. We will begin with the native land acknowledgement. Vice Chair Benaloga will lead the acknowledgement this evening.
We acknowledge the land on which we sit and which we call the North Clackamas School District rests on the traditional and indigenous lands and village sites of the native peoples of the Kalapuya, Chinook, Molalla, and the Clackamas. We take this opportunity to offer gratitude for the ability to learn, work, and to be a community on this land, and we offer thanks to the original caretakers of this region. We recognize the historic policies of colonization, genocide, relocation, and assimilation that affected Indigenous and Native families, both past and present, and that will affect those in the future, and honor the resilience and revitalization of our Indigenous and Native communities. We pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, who have been the stewards of this land throughout the generations.
Thank you, Vice Chair Benaloga. Next, board members, please turn off your cameras. Director McVeigh will lead the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director McVeigh. First on the agenda is minutes and from the February 9th board meeting. This agenda item is being removed from tonight's agenda and will be rescheduled to a future meeting. The consent agenda is also being removed from tonight's agenda and will be rescheduled to a future meeting. Followed by two proclamations, the Public School Week proclamation and the Classified Employee Appreciation Week. Both of those will be rescheduled to a future board meeting. Agenda item 3 is Billquist Elementary School. Due to the school closure today, this agenda item is being removed from today's agenda and will be rescheduled to a future meeting. Finally, agenda item 4, the 2023-2027 integrated grant application for student success discussion. I welcome Assistant Superintendent of Education, Yvonne Dibley, to introduce the presenter for this agenda item. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you, Chair Bauer. Good evening, directors. As you may recall, the student investment account process was quite complex, and now we are tasked with bringing forward a new plan while integrating the State Department's key initiatives. Tonight, we have Director of Integrated Programs, Jen Dove-Kiltow, who will outline the new process as we prepare to apply for the next round of grant funding. So I welcome Director Kiltow.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And then let me get my slideshow going. There we go. Can everybody see that okay? And can you hear me okay? I see Yvonne. Okay, great. I see head shaking. Awesome. Thank you so much. So again, thanks for having me here tonight as we go over our plan for the 2023-2027. So for the next 4 years, integrated grant application. Tonight, the purpose is for me to tell you about the process that we took in planning and developing our integrated plan, and to share with you what priorities came out as we engaged our community, and then introduce the plan itself so that you can familiarize yourself with it, ask any questions you may have, and then seek approval at the March 9th board meeting so that we can submit our plan to the Oregon Department of Education. Oops. To give you a little bit of background, this integrated approach was in response to requests from educational leaders and state legislators to create a combined process for community engagement, needs assessments, planning, budgeting, and evaluation for 6 different programs that I'll talk about tonight, with the intent to reduce burdens and redundancies and to create a better framework for a measurable evaluation. Eventually, over time, this approach should ease burdens, although it's been a little difficult to navigate this year as it's a new approach with new guidelines, but ultimately it's designed to improve processes. So these are the 6 programs with common goals set forth by the Oregon Department of Education incorporated into the plan. So we have high school success, the student investment account, continuous improvement planning, career and technical education, everyday matters, and early indicators and intervention systems. And there are 4 common goals that ODE came up with for these 6 programs, which allows integration to be possible. And as we dug deeper into these 4 goals, we crosswalked them with our own strategic plan compass points and found that they really align nicely, which helped as we were creating our plan because we were able to see the relevancy and relationship between what ODE was wanting to achieve and then our own plan for North Clackamas. As you can see, the slide helps define the purpose for each of the 6 programs. Not all of these programs come with designated or dedicated resources, but they are required by ODE as part of the overall plan. So we have high school success, which is funded by Measure 98 and aids in increasing graduation rates and college and career readiness. The student investment account, which is set up to meet students' mental health, behavioral needs, and to increase academic achievement while reducing disparities for student focal groups. We have the continuous improvement plan, which is an example of one of the programs that does not come with direct dedicated resources, but is a required process to develop and implement a multi-year improvement plan. Career technical education, which is supported by Perkins 5 funds and is developed to develop the academic knowledge and technical skills and employable skills of our secondary students. Early indicator and intervention systems, which focus on the development of data collection and an analysis system to help identify supports for students. And then finally, we have Everyday Matters, which is embedded across all 5 of the other programs. With the goal of focusing attention on student engagement, school culture, and climate and safety. The draft plan is for an estimated $17.2 million in the 3 areas that you see here: the student investment account, Measure 98, and early indicators and intervention systems. It does not reflect the North Clackamas general fund budget of approximately $270 million. So when viewing this plan, please keep that in mind, that this is one portion of the district's funding and reflects a 4-year plan with 2 years of budgeting. So 23-24 and then 24-25. Certainly roll-up costs, inflation, et cetera, will ultimately affect overall costs of the activities and key investments that we have planned. As part of our process, we put together some planning teams, and there were several stages of planning that occurred throughout the process. And we had teams for community engagement, needs assessment team, and then narrative and budgeting team. So there's a narrative portion to this plan and then the budgeting portion. And we didn't have just one team, rather multiple teams. So it was really nice. Every department in our district was able to be a part of the development of the plan in some way. Certainly, there were requirements throughout the process, and it required us to follow the steps you see here in order to curate a quality plan to match our local needs. So we were required to use an equity lens. We were required to have community engagement and a comprehensive needs assessment, to consider the Oregon Quality Education Model, which is basically a belief that all of our students have the ability to learn and that we have a responsibility to make sure that the system supports them in their learning. To review and use regional CTE consortium inputs. So we got inputs from our regional CTE consortium that we looked at. Further examination of potential impacts on our focal students, and then the development of the 4-year plan with clear outcomes, strategies, and activities. you're familiar with our equity lens. And as mentioned, the use of an equity lens is a requirement, and we are fortunate to have the one that you see here and are familiar with. And the use of our equity lens supported us to operationalize and our commitments and values. And it really helped translate our theories into practice and focus on assets rather than deficits. And ultimately helps us to avoid making decisions that could potentially marginalize or harm others. As mentioned, community engagement was a big piece of this, and it was very critical to the development of our plan because we'd recently engaged our community through the strategic planning process. We had a lot of great input already to build upon. So that really laid the foundation for our planning. And we engaged our community in a variety of ways beyond that, including thought exchange, surveys, interviews, community meetings, both in person and virtually. We also did one-on-one in-person interviews and made phone calls to folks. We went to several of our larger apartment complexes in the area that have communal spaces to talk with families that live there. And then we went to schools and to online meetings where established groups were already meeting. And you can see in this picture here, this is already one of our established Madres groups that we met with. We also went to places like when we had the coat drive at Wichita, we went and we just did one-on-one interviews with folks and really gathered important information regarding the needs of families in that way. Throughout the process, we took great care, of course, to ensure privacy and safety. We know that many focal groups have historically and or are currently experiencing incidents of violence and harm due to their identities. So special care was taken when we engaged these groups. We wanted to protect confidentiality as much as possible. And we always tried to thank folks for their time that they spent with us. So we had North Clackamas swag that we handed out. We provided meals when we were there, whether at lunch or dinner times. Childcare was always an option, as were interpretation and translation services. These are some of the groups that we met with, both students as well as adults. So as you can see, we really tried to reach a wide range of our focal groups and to really again, meet with groups wherever they were at, whether it was at a school setting or if they had a planned online meeting. We used our community outreach folks to help us engage with people. And we used our engagement specialists at schools to meet with students. So it was very valuable information gathered. These are some of the things that we gleaned from them, our key learnings. And just to preface with, a lot of this was really impactful given what families and students and staff have gone through in the past few years with the pandemic. They were very clear with us that things were, they seemed much bigger and much more serious now, having had these last few years and now being post-pandemic. Things seem a lot more more urgent, I guess I could say. So for our parents and caregivers, key learnings were parents, they want to be communicated with and involved in their child's school. Inclusion and culturally relevant practices are strongly desired. There's a general overall desire for additional academic supports and the need for mental health supports in culturally affirming ways. When we met with our focal groups, that was an ask that they had of us. Our staff, class size and caseload is really important to them. It's their number one concern in a survey that we put out. There is an increase in the need for students who they're needing supports around behavioral and mental health supports, and our teachers are recognizing and feeling that. The retention and hiring of bilingual and staff of color is a continued need. And then the substitute shortage, of course, remains a large concern for them. And then for our students, and as you heard at our last board meeting, the mental health supports are very much needed and needed in a culturally affirming way. There's a strong desire for school staff to reflect their demographics, and then a strong desire or a strong connection, a desire for a stronger connection to culturally relevant curriculum and instruction. And I just want to pause for a moment and just the power of our students and their voice going throughout this process was pretty incredible. We have our youth truth data as a starting place, but we wanted to go deeper and engage different focal groups around the districts of our students. And they were so engaged in discussions and were just really able to clearly express their thoughts and feelings regarding what is important to them and why. They were willing to listen and stay engaged in difficult concepts that I know a lot of adults would not want to engage in and would simply walk away from. So I give them a lot of credit. The kids in this district are pretty incredible. We had a district level needs assessment as part of this process. We do needs assessments at the building levels. We do them at the district office levels, but this was really a time for us to take kind of a cross section of a variety of folks from our district and come together. So we brought together about 50 people who represent different aspects of our community, and we had staff, parents, community partners, like the boys, representatives from the Boys and Girls Club. We had school staff and administrators, a school board member. This took place over the course of 2 days in January, where we gathered at the Joe Crum Room. And our goal was to analyze data and determine prioritized areas of strength and areas of growth or need for our district. So during our first meeting, our purpose was to ground ourselves and begin to analyze both qualitative and quantitative data. We spent a little time at the start of the meeting kind of establishing some community, and people came together really, really quickly and had very deep conversation about the data that we put in front of them. Small groups went through the process of discussing this data, and then from that, creating posters that identified areas of strength and then areas of need. So you can see here examples of the data that we analyzed during the needs assessment. The combination of qualitative and quantitative data allowed the team to gain an understanding, a deeper understanding of what the district's needs were, with the quantitative data really guiding us to what our needs might be, but the qualitative data helping us to understand maybe some of the why behind what those needs are. And through this process, all of our data was disaggregated as was appropriate so that we could ensure safety of certain focal groups, but also to allow us to, throughout the process, along with our equity lens, make sure that we were making equity-based decisions. During our second meeting, we once again met in those groups, and this time our task was to narrow down the areas of need in a thematic way, and then from there, pull out what our priorities would be. So between the first and second meeting, we were able to kind of gather all of the information that they had produced in the way of areas of strength and areas of need, and it created 4 different themes that you can see here. So academic outcomes and engagement was a theme, equity and diversity was a theme, communication was a theme, and then mental health and behavior supports was a theme. And so through a process of dot voting, each person received a certain number of dots, and then they placed those dots in the area that they felt needed the most attention. So you can kind of see how that ended up here. People could spread their dots across all different areas, or they could cluster them all into one. And from there, we came up with our priorities. So you can see here through our community engagement efforts, our needs assessment process, and examination of data, these are the priorities that emerged. You'll see in our plan that goals were set in each of these areas. And we know that there are potentially competing interests or limits to funding. So our goal is to create a plan that offers as much support as possible based on what our community has expressed as needs. So in your board packet, you received both the narrative application portion, which is a lot of questions that we were asked to reflect on and answer in 250 words or less. It is very difficult to answer all the great things that we do in our district and our needs in 250 words or less, but that's what you see there. And then you also have our planned expenditures. What you have in front of you is for year one, that would be duplicated for year two, given the different costs that we might associate with that. You can see that each of those planned expenditures on the planned expenditure, each different priority has an estimated investment based on the activities, and I'll speak to this in a minute, the activities that we have planned. So for example, the class size and caseload reduction is estimated investment of $6 million. And then you can also see that there are common goals from ODE checked off for which of those goals are addressed within our goals, our outcomes for each priority. And you would also see which of the budget sources those would come from. So those are two documents that I wanted to bring to your attention as part of our, which is our plan. That is our plan. So each priority has an outcome or outcomes. So our goals, the strategies and activities that support growth in each of the priority areas, the outcomes being the long-term goals. The strategies are specific things that we'll do to reach those long-term goals. And then the activities are the key investments. So things like FTE, supplies, contracted work, etc. And the next few slides are examples just to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like for one of our priority areas. So this is from the priority area of supporting the behavioral and mental health needs of students and families. And as you can see here, our outcome, our long-term goal is to ensure students' mental health needs are addressed. Social, emotional, and behavior needs are met by qualified professionals in schools to increase student sense of belonging and increase graduation and attendance rates. So if we do this, then this should happen. And then you can see here our strategies to meet that goal. And then we have activities, and the activities again are key investments that will help us reach the goal. So as you can see, we intend to invest and or continue to invest in school counseling positions, social workers, family advocates, etc. Many of the key investments are being co-funded with other funding streams, and some of these positions might be maintaining positions that are currently in place, and some may be new hires or new contracts. These funds account for approximately, just on this one on the screen here, approximately 32 FTE in the job roles that are on this slide. We will take a planned tiered approach. We know that we're working with anticipated budget allocations. So should their actual allocations change, or if we are unable to say hire for certain positions, we've planned some backup activities so that we can pivot to those if needed. So we have our plan A, and then we have some items listed in as a backup plan to those. Here's an example. So we have activities to reach this outcome, but should some of those activities not pan out, we might be able to increase the number of social workers or purchase additional curriculum to support social emotional needs of students. As part of the process, our community will have the opportunity to review our plan and give feedback. There will be two options for people who are interested. We'll be sending out a thought exchange asking for feedback. We were set to do that tomorrow. It looks like that will probably be Monday morning. But Seth and I have met and we're ready to send that out. And then certainly people are welcome to, at the next school board meeting, if they sign up for public comment, they could share their thoughts that way as well. So this information will be posted on our school website. They'll be able to watch this on YouTube, watch my presentation tonight on YouTube, and then they're welcome to offer feedback. ODE offers a kind of performance framework that our work is going to be reviewed through, and this includes a mixture of outcome measures, programmatic and financial reporting, and the opportunity for local optional metrics. So we have some requirements, some metrics that we have to write goals around, and then we have optional ones we can write goals around, which we will as a district. So for the student investment account specifically, growth targets are required in the areas that you see here. So this is what we refer to as the 5 common metrics. 3rd grade reading proficiency rates measured by English language arts, 9th grade on track rates, regular attendance rates, 4-year on-time graduation rates, and then 5-year completion rates. So once ODE reviews and approves our plan, they will partner with us as required by SIA legislation to co-develop and finalize our growth targets. And we will come back to you to review not only the targets that we co-develop, but also finalize the approved by ODE grant agreement later this spring or summer. After we submit our application, we do expect that it will take several months to hear back from ODE. So this is really a 2-step approach. Approval from you in March for us to submit our application, and then coming back before next school year to finalize for the final approval of the grant agreement. So next, we will, after you've approved, submit our plan. The application window is open from March 1st to March 30th, right in there. So the entire month of March. It will go through a 2-part process. From there, ODE staff will make a determination of whether our plan meets the criteria and requirements. And then it will go to a panel called the Quality Assurance and Learning Panel for further review. And that team will review and affirm or challenge the assessment made by ODE staff. And from there, we will hear back from them. So I finally just want to leave you with this graphic. I really love this, and it meant a lot to me at the time when we were doing this work with the needs assessment. So this is a Wordle, and you've seen these before. And at our very first needs assessment meeting, I asked our participants to write down their hopes and dreams for the students of North Clackamas. And I collected all of those and then put them into a web-based system that looks at a piece of text and draws out the most commonly, frequently used words, and words get bigger as the more frequent a word appears within the text. And as you can see here, students is the center of the graphic, and it's also the largest word, that and hope. And so that's the ultimate goal with this plan, is keeping our students and their needs at the heart of all that we do. So I thank you for your time and attention tonight, and I am happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for a wonderful detailed report and all the information that you provided to us too. We really appreciate that. Board members, raise your hand. This is a work session. It's a very important, all these programs. And I see Director McVeigh, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the electronic hand, but of course I can't find it.
Then we'll go to Director Perez after you.
Thanks, Jen. Great presentation as usual. And I'm going to be really embarrassed here if I should already know this, but have we gotten anything back from OD and how well we performed against our last plan?
As far as
did we do what we said we would do in their eyes?
Well, I think Joel could probably answer that a little bit better than I could, just as he's kind of rounding up this last round with SIA. So Joel?
Yeah, so Director McVeigh, what happens through this process is we do quarterly reports to ODE and then an annual report, and they provide us feedback to ensure that what we said we were going to do, we were going to do. The only caveat to that is during the pandemic, we didn't have any testing. So those academic measures were put on hold, which Jen has now said they'll reestablish. So the academic is not part of that, But as far as what we said we would do and what we did, we're in full compliance. And again, they give us feedback every quarter.
And have we seen that? That's why I said I'm gonna be really embarrassed if I've already looked at it, or is it something that's just at the administration level?
The only thing that you would have seen is we do a report of the annual review that happened this past year for the prior year. The reports that go to ODE are on a smart sheet, so you would not have seen those per se, but if you wanted to see the quarterly report smart sheet, it's a large document. I could work with our leadership to get that to you.
Yeah, I guess it was more about, I know we're shining stars in the state. I know we are. And I'm just wondering, are we the gold standard? Is there something that another district, do they share results? Like, I mean, we're all in this together, right? Whether we're in Medford or in Portland, do they share like, this was a goal of this district and look what it did in this area of achievement or in this engagement process or any of that stuff that we could all start learning from? And that's what I was wondering, does the ODE give us that, or maybe just it gives it to superintendents? I don't know.
I have received numerous requests to share with other districts about our report. So to me, that is evidence that what we're doing is really important and doing a nice job. So I think that is one way to do that. The other piece, we do have the financial audit that happens that you guys approve that is also evaluated and reviewed. Every dollar of the SIA fund is coded, connected to school and specific. So that's all accounted for through our financial audit as a district.
Yeah,
Well,
Director
thank you.
McVeigh, I just think the only thing that I would add is that this is where the longitudinal growth targets are super important. And because there was that lapse with the pandemic and the assessment pieces, they really were not able to establish those in this first round, but very much a part of the second round, because they want to make sure that the investments that we are making those growths, and they want to be able to quantify it. So we have good quality data, but we want to make sure we have the quantity data, and we'll be working with our county partner, the Education Service District, the CESD, as well as with the Oregon Department of Education to make sure that we're establishing the right goals, that we have a great baseline, and we're actually able to see that growth.
Thank you.
Director Perez.
Thank you, Chair Bauer. And just want to note that since, I used some strenuous energy in finding the electronic hand key, I feel like board members that can do that should go first over those that can't find the electronic hand. I just want to point that out, Director McVeigh. So my question is, thank you, Jen, for the awesome presentation. That was actually really informative. How do we do, I heard you say that in the meetings, or I heard that one of the issues for parents is maintaining class size and caseload reduction. So my question is, we're getting a lot of kids coming in, and kids are at the core of what we do. That's why we're all here. How do we make it so that, and was it discussed at those meetings in January? Was there any ideas or any solutions so that when houses are going up and apartment buildings are going up and all these things that are being built, how do we make it so it coincides with the school? And so that schools and the growth, instead of all this growth, and then you got to jam them into the schools, how do we make it? Was that discussed so that there's, collaboration, and it's going at an equal so that we can find a place for these kids, and it's not in a class of 35, 40, 45. Does that make sense? I don't know if my question.
Yeah, it does make sense. And a couple things. That was not specifically at that deeper, at the level that you're talking about discussed at this, like that was not the purpose of that particular group of people. What I can tell you is with the law behind these funds, they are to be used for, they're very targeted. So to be used for students who are in certain focal groups, or students who maybe attend students living in poverty. So the funds may not match other areas of our district. So we really looked at, as far as, we will look at where are those focal groups of students that match the funds so that the staffing is placed in those schools. Does that make sense? That's for SIA funds. If there are other areas, that's where we have other funding streams that may come into play.
Yeah, and I understand. Yeah, thank you. I understand that. I guess I went on a deeper level, and just in that, I don't understand how, that question continues to arise. I mean, everybody wants decent class size. We all do, right? But when I drive around my neighborhood and I see all these houses going up and all these apartments going up and everything going up, what are we missing here? What can we do so that the schools and the growth around it is working together, so that we do have a place for our kids to go and smaller class sizes and stuff. I don't know if that makes, this is probably a discussion for another. I'm going on a deeper.
It definitely makes sense. And it definitely was not, we did not have that discussion during our needs assessment on that deep of a level. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jen.
I think what I can add to this part of the conversation is that when we go through the staffing process and we look at the budget and what we're getting for our general fund budget, we have class size at the center of, that staffing process. Within SIA, in this specific granting source, those funds are meant to be used to ensure that we're keeping the class sizes down, right? So we have several buckets that funding is targeted towards. And so in the process that we took, we've already invested in a lot of great work with literacy, with keeping, in fact, the large percentage of the funds through the student investment account is actually towards class size and reduction of class size. So everything else we try to see, okay, what can we do in these other funding areas? Or is there a need to continue to look and focus on that class size? And then that's where the needs assessments and listening to students and seeing what their experiences are, so that the money that we have left over, we can actually say, okay, we can put this towards this particular focus area. Because when we look at what we received in the last biennium to what we're receiving in this biennium, it's actually not a lot of funding. And so I think we're talking about two different things. One is the staffing process and understanding that kids come with money attached to them. So that supports that staffing process. And then the SIA piece is actually supporting, that part of the focus and seeing how we outline the plan and how we actually divvy up based on what our community is telling us. I hope that helps clarify just a little bit further.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Dibley.
Thank you. And we'll go with Director Way, but I just want to add to this that I think the first year of this, we weren't totally funded, right? In the first biennium of the first year of that. So we didn't get to use all of the dollars, but also the state school fund has been short. We we've never met the QEM, and the local option levy is helping with some of those programs, or is helping funding too, to keep our staff and our programs. So I'll just throw that out there, but go ahead, Director Way.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. I know it was given at a high level, but I really like some of the examples that you used, Jen. That was helpful. I guess my comment and question was, I was noticing some of the themes, which I guess now serving 5 years on this board is not surprising to me, around much needed additional academic support, maybe before school, during school, after school, right? And then also just the themes around the culturally responsive instruction, and just really kind of highlighting that equity piece, so that all students can feel like they're thriving in our schools. So that's sort of my comment. I guess my question is, are we continuing to engage, and I hope we are, culturally specific providers, whether that's in Clackamas or in other counties, who might be interested in partnership, like real contracts, right? Like with our district. I asked that because I used to be a culturally specific provider for an academic success program, actually, in Multnomah County. So I know they exist and they're out there. And some of us who have, maybe come from PPS or other school districts also know that a lot of those culturally and community-based organizations are there. But I just know that in Clackamas, they're just not so much in Clackamas as they are perhaps in other counties. So I'm just wondering if that is a strategy. And I'm sorry if I haven't read through the whole report yet, but I'm just wondering if that is a strategy of, again, doing that outreach to different community-based organizations that have particular skill sets that work with, marginalized or underserved populations that we can continue to partner with.
The answer to your question is yes. And so, yes, we definitely have some partnerships in place, and we know we need more. Our students recognize, they said, we see that there are supports for us. We see that there are groups that come in that look like us, that sound like us, and we need more. And so our goal is to build upon what we have and continue to seek out new opportunities.
Director Way, is that it? Any other questions?
No, I think that's great. I guess, again, maybe just because of my background, and I really want us to, continue to go further again with the partnerships and the community organizations. If you all have like a list, I'm sure you do, of just like, hey, these are the groups, these are the organizations that, we're in contact with, or we would just love to learn, we would love to learn more about, because, there's an emerging population, right, of students. We're not quite, able to meet their needs. Like, I'm thinking of like our Pacific Islander students or Native American students. Again, just looking at our strategic plan and looking at ESL students, or, looking at our strategic plan and looking at, where are those gaps, right, where we need to really, lift up more of the academic achievement amongst those groups. So I'm thinking like, yeah, if you have a specific list, that would be helpful.
Sure. Yes, we can definitely get a specific list of who we already have or who we're talking to. But I also want to say that part of this whole process is continuing that engagement, and not just waiting for 2 more years to pass. And so I think it's really important that we think about that while we have strengths in some of these areas, and we do have groups that we are working with, and it is necessary for us to continue to go back to groups and say, we've implemented this. How is this working for you? We're doing this now. We've brought this group in. Are your needs being met in this way? And so I just wanted to make sure that people understand this is not a one and done thing. This is not something we're just going to do every 2 to 4 years. It's ongoing.
And I think what I will add is that we do look for culturally responsive providers and culturally diverse providers as well, because we understand, the importance of having the wide perspective, having the lived experiences, having their relevancy, with the experiences of our students. We've when we look at contracts, that's one of the main things that we do. We're looking to expand. So for example, I have different conversations with some of our current providers that are working with 1 or 2 schools, and we're going to have conversations, okay, about what have we learned through these last 2 years or 3 years, and how can we begin to expand, and what, what's working well, and how do we shift. And I think the other thing is that it's important to recognize that, with every school district in our metro area wanting to extend and have contracted services, there are not a lot of providers out there, and we hope to see more providers. We hope to see that this is an area that begins to grow in our metro area, because we know that the need is there. We know that there's districts that want to work, obviously including us, and expanding those services, and we know that it is not an area where we have the depth of services that we would love to see. So we are hoping that as we walk this road together, that not only do we get these services met for our students, but that more and more providers, have the opportunity to have their services in the area.
Thank you. No, I just appreciate you saying that, because that is a statewide issue, right? It's like these providers, a lot of them are amazing, and they come with that knowledge, and again, it's just a very unique skill set. So it's like, how do we duplicate that, triplicate that, those efforts statewide? I'm kind of sensing that maybe some of us might need to just advocate for that at the state level, and maybe talk to ODE about those needs. So thanks for bringing that up.
Hey, Director Benaloga.
Yes, thank you. I have 2 comments and then just a question, just to clarify for me. I want to, first of all, I think I really appreciate, Jen, that you highlighted, first of all, tremendous work went into that document and went into the work and to the plan. So I appreciate that. I really appreciate that there's a plan for funds if we aren't able to hire, that there's already like a plan H or HIJK, that there's already plans to use those funds if we're not able to implement everything, or if we're not able to hire for everything. I think that's super important. I also just want to highlight that our kids are truly amazing, and going off of the presentation at the last board meeting, and then spending time with a group of kids on Monday in Salem advocating for mental health supports and services. I mean, I just want the district to feel really good about that. We have a lot of kids that are very, very comfortable being vulnerable and really asking for what they need. And that takes a strong culture to have kids that say, this is what I need to be successful, and these are the places that I feel vulnerable or I don't feel as supported. I think that is just an amazing feat, that we have kids that are coming to us and really telling us what their successes are, but what they need to be successful as well. I just think that is just wonderful. So I wanted to highlight that. I did have just so I'm understanding, because I noticed that under activities, some of them say maintain, but then others of them, and specifically I'm on page 3 where it says Dean of Students, and then reconnection specialists and those kinds of things. Are those additional? Are those in addition to what we already have? Or is that maintaining positions that we've already filled?
So where it says maintaining, that is truly maintaining. Where it does not say maintaining, it was either we had the intention to hire and couldn't find anyone previously, or it would be a new hire. So those are the 3 different ways to look at it. So either maintain, or potentially because we weren't able to find somebody, they may have been in the original plan, but.
All right, excellent. Because that helps me a little bit, just because I see some of them say maintain, and then I see that it says the Dean of Students for targeted support at secondary. So I'm just trying to understand, was that a new position? Or was that something that we're just maintaining? All right. Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. And you are so right. The kids that the high school students, that the student equity advisory team, our high school leadership teams, they were in this from the beginning to the end, and they still are wanting to have conversation. So I'm really proud of our students.
Any other questions or input from board members? I just had a couple. The comments, it was an amazing report, lots of detail and very timely, as this did come up when we were lobbying in Salem, and we were asked to audit. What is our audit of the student success? You have it all here. And I'm so glad you said, you brought up that we do our audit of our total budget every year. And this is part of that too. So thank you for saying that. I just wanted a little bit more detail, because on your key learnings, the mental health and behavior health was on all of those categories. And so you have an amount for mental and behavior. And I was trying to understand too what Director Benaloga was addressing. What is in addition, or what is new under the mental and behavior health? How many FT are new there? Can you just give me an approximate? Or resources are in addition?
Let me look.
I think it's on.
I see where you're at, and to be honest, I couldn't give you right this minute how many are brand new. I would have to really dig into it a little bit more. A lot of it is maintaining, and for some of this, maintaining means that we are keeping those positions or those contracts. We may have to adjust some of what it is that goes on during those times with students, but a lot of this is maintaining in that specific area.
Okay, yeah.
Chair
It
Bauer?
is. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to add that because there were so many positions that we were hoping to hire for, it actually is an area that it really fluctuates. So, they could have been thought of as new positions, but we couldn't hire for them. So, for example, we had the qualified mental health professionals that we really wanted to make sure were a part of supporting our students, supporting our schools. We were only able to hire a couple of positions, but we're definitely hoping to extend that and hire and fully fund those positions. I think another area that, while it's not necessarily about staff members, but very much supporting students with their social emotional growth, especially at elementary, is all of the work that we've done for regulation rooms. So that is, again, one of those areas that these young people, when they get to high school, they're able to express themselves and they're able to be vulnerable. But that's actually really starting at kindergarten. At kindergarten, kids are learning to name their emotions. They're learning to understand when they're calm and they're ready to learn. And so much of it is also looking at strategies and ways in which we could support students and adults to create a healthy and loving atmosphere for students so that they can learn. So it is an area where I just wanted to make sure that it's not only positions, it's also strategies, and it's also ways in which we're trying to mitigate the different staff shortages that so many of us have been affected by.
Well, thank you for that, because that is part of your backup plan, you said, and your overall many different tools that you're dealing with. And could someone explain, just for people listening to your multi-tiered system of supports, just a little bit more about that? And that, like you said, starts young, but that's at every level, correct or not?
Yeah, so our multi-leveled systems of support is a way for us to support students both at the core level, so all students receive access to core curriculum and instruction. And then there's additional supports as needed. And so that might be additional supports in the form of an intervention, but it also might be additional supports in the form of some sort of a acceleration, as far as, you know, our tag system. Tag students who are identified as tag are within the get MTSS support within that framework. So, and that's K-12.
And I think where we've really looked at that, and I think this goes back to Director McVeigh's question, right? Is that when we look at implementing these types of systems, MTSS is actually a framework. It has a fidelity assessment. So we as schools, as a district office team, we look to see how we have supported and what steps we've implemented to support both instruction and behavior, because the system or the framework is really looking at the type of instruction in both behavior and academics, the time with which we utilize that instruction. So for example, if you are meeting your goals and you're beating benchmark in both academics and behavior, then that time for direct instruction is going to be the minimal time, right? But if you need additional support, you're going to need a little bit more time with a teacher. And if you need intensive support, you need a lot more time to reach that standard. And then again, focus, right? Is the focus on academics or is the focus on behavior? And that's where all of these initiatives, and I think the key initiatives that, you know, have been brought forth by the state and why we work towards this is because we want well-rounded students. We want students to be able to have behavior support so they are successful in the environment, and we want them to succeed academically.
Thank you. And Director Ford, I'm sorry I didn't see your hand earlier. You should have gone before me.
Well, my hand wasn't up before you spoke, so
Okay.
in all fairness. I just wanted to say I appreciate the presentation and the details and the work that went behind, you know, all the information that we're hearing this evening. And there's a lot of things I think we all knew, and some things that are just defined clearer with some of the things that you have presented. I would like to make one suggestion, because I do think as a parent, we have to figure out a way to convey to parents like what this means for them, right? Because I think it's really easy for us. We show up here, we're ready to listen to these reports, you know. Well, we all know every parent has a different situation, different amount of time, access, all those things. So I think if we could come up with some type of simple way to say, here's what this means for you, or here's what we need from you. You know what I mean? Here's where you can help. I just think those points after we do this big kind of work, but bringing that back to reality is what I'm suggesting that we do, so that we don't leave people out, and they just can quickly know what we can do.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And we actually have been talking about that as part of our ESD group through Clackamas ESD. How can we now take this work and make it meaningful for all of our families? And so I've talked with Seth a little bit and talked with Curtis a little bit about some different ways that we can get the message out there so that people can hear about it in a way that's easy to digest. A lot of times in education, we have big words and just we're talking in acronyms, and we need to, you know, make people feel comfortable with what it is that we're doing, so that they can, you know, feel like they're a part of the conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that summary of where you guys are going. And yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. We just got to figure out how to make people know where their action is at. So appreciate that.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you all board members for your questions, your input. And I think too, one thing we need to do is make aware how this is different from the state school fund and how they all fit together. And this is targeted. And what is the state school fund used for? So, and I think that'll come out more when we get into our budget process too. But thank you for a great report, Jennifer Deb Kilgo and Assistant Superintendent Dibley. Appreciate all the time that and work that went into this. Agenda item 5, Oregon Paid Family Medical Leave Update. I welcome Executive Director of Finance and Business Services, Matt Macara, and Executive Director of Human Resources, Michelle Riddell, for this agenda item. Welcome.
Thank you. Oregon Paid Family Leave is a topic that has been a frequent source of productive conversations in the district's benefits committee, and now we are happy to have the opportunity to share out more information with a broader audience now. Next slide. Oh, there we go. Oregon Paid Family Medical Leave is the result of legislation passed in 2019, HB 2005, which established the Paid Family Medical Leave Insurance Program for employers with 25 or more employees, which the district certainly falls under. This program allows employees to take time off for different things like medical, family, bonding, or safe leave, all of which aligns with the district's core values. And it's also an expansion on some of the other short-term programs that have been out there before, are more focused or narrower around disability or other things like that. So this kind of expands the opportunities that employees may have for needed leave. We've also left a link in the PowerPoint to the state's website, paidleave.oregon.gov. For anyone that is interested in more information, it is a really well put together website with a lot of really good information. I would encourage anyone who has questions or interest to check that out. Next slide, please. The Paid Leave Oregon contributions are the amount that employers and employees pay into the program. The contributions started on January 1st, 2023, unless an employer has applied and approved for an equivalent plan. I will get to that in a little more detail in a slide or two, but North Clackamas has opted for an equivalent plan, and we have our application and program have been approved by the state, and we're one of the first employers that had an equivalent plan approved. Contributions are a minimum 1% of wages. The employee contribution portion is capped, or is 60% of that, and that is capped at that. The employers cover the additional 40% on top of that, although the cost may vary and be above that if an employer goes with an equivalent plan. Employees can begin to apply for benefits starting on September 3rd, 2023. I should also mention that, an equivalent plan is a paid leave plan administered by a third party and approved by the Oregon Employment Department. Equivalent plans must provide benefits that are equal or greater to the Paid Leave Oregon program provided through the state. Again, a paid leave or an equivalent plan must offer the same or greater benefits than those offered through the state program. An employer cannot deduct more from an employee's paycheck than allowed, which again is capped at 0.6 of 1% of wages. And you must have the Oregon Employment Department approve the plan, which, as I mentioned, we were one of the first employers in the state to have an equivalent plan approved. The partner or plan provider that North Clackamas has gone with is the Standard. Some in a little bit of background, the decision to go with an equivalent plan was based on a couple different reasons, and some of the benefits of going with the Standard are that going with a third party fully funds Oregon paid family medical leave. We anticipate faster payments to employees. One of the lessons in other states that have implemented a similar program is that, at least initially, the state administered plans have not had a reputation for providing fast payments or processing things in a timely manner, which is especially concerning in situations that an employee may need to take leave. You don't want them to have any concerns or worries or anything about when they may receive the benefit. The Standard also already administers North Clackamas's short and long-term disability programs, and we've had good experience with them through those programs. And then also, and this is also a fairly significant thing, that employees and employers do not have to contribute payroll deductions until September 2023, which is a savings for both employers and employees. As I mentioned, that's because employers that are using the state plan had to start taking deductions through payroll starting in January, whereas we won't have to until September. Next slide, please. And then who pays for Oregon paid family medical leave? Both employers and employees contribute to that. The total contribution is employers pay a minimum of 40% of 1%, and employees pay 60% of 1% of payroll. The plan that we have opted for through the Standard will be a little bit more, will be a little bit more of a obligation for the district. We will be paying a total of 1.6%, or as the math works out to payroll, 0.0016% above the minimum contribution of 0.004% of payroll. So our total contribution will be a little bit higher. And again, that is the experience that other states that have had put a similar program in place. What in the long run, generally speaking, employers that have opted for a third party program have it's usually paid off in the long run. State programs have tended to be underfunded up front and initially, so the rates of the state administered plans have tended to rise faster over time than the third party plans. So that was also a part of the district's consideration in opting for a third party plan. And with that, I will hand it over to Michelle Riddell for the remainder of the presentation.
Great, thanks, Matt. So who is eligible? In essence, pretty much all employees are eligible. they, as long as employees have had earned $1,000 in the previous year, they are eligible. So for most of our employees, that they will be. And those benefits are based on wages from all their employment. So not just us. So we would look to any full-time, part-time, temporary. So we believe that most employees will be eligible for this paid leave. And the leave types, these run very similar to the Oregon paid family leave, which is OFLA or FEMLA, the federal. So we already have leave that employees are eligible for. The big difference in this is that this is paid leave. And the OFLA, FEMLA that have been around for a while, those are really unpaid leave unless employees have paid leave available. So that's the big difference. They are very similar in that they have family leave that they can take leave for, medical leave. And then the new one that really that this offers is the safe leave. And so I think that's really an important part. It really expands for employees to be able to take leave if they're survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, harassment, or stalking. So that is definitely new, and their jobs are protected for that type of leave. The benefits of Oregon paid leave are very similar to the OFLA FEMLA. So it's up to 12 weeks of paid leave per year. And there's additional couple weeks for pregnancy related medical leave. And like I mentioned, if you've worked for your employer or North Clackamas for more than 90 days, then your job is protected. And it does run concurrently then with what we were talking about, the OFLA FEMLA. So if it's for those same reasons, if you're taking that family leave or that medical leave, which is what OFLA FEMLA also offers, it runs concurrently. What would be different is if you were taking that new safe leave, that isn't something that's offered under OFLA FEMLA. So that actually would be additional leave that you could take above and beyond the OFLA FEMLA leave. All right, questions that we can answer for you.
Hey, board members, go ahead, raise your hand, and I will try to recognize. Any questions? Comments? See any? Guess that was so clear. We all got it.
Right. Well,
I
this
know
is
I'm very-
definitely information that we'll be sharing with employees as we go along. There's still some details that the state haven't confirmed for us yet, but we will begin to start to share this information so employees know how to access it. So
Well,
thank you.
great. This is good news for our employees, and thank you then for the information, Matt and Michelle.
Thank you.
Matt, I guess you're staying on for
Yes.
quarterly financials. I welcome you back to report on finances.
Thank you. Good evening again. I'd like to share some highlights from the financial report for the quarter ending December 31st, 2022. The projected total general fund ending fund balance is forecasted at approximately 35.7 million, or approximately 12.84% of projected revenues. This includes approximately 2.6 million in restricted ending fund balance for future PERS rate increases. Revenues, including state school fund and taxes, are generally in line with expectations thus far. Forecasted revenues have been revised upwards in two areas, however. The first of which is interest from investments has been increased by $625,000 due to our ability to take advantage of the current favorable investment opportunities. And other services and fees have been increased by 1.5 million to reflect the recovery of expenses from prior years. Expenditures generally are trending lower than budget. This is primarily due to lower than anticipated salaries and benefits. And although generally, I would say that they are ahead of the pace during the previous two fiscal years that were more heavily impacted by the pandemic. Finally, as part of the financial report, you have investment reports showing the type of investment, maturity date, and the fund for which the investment is held. Interest rates are higher than they have been in the past, which is what has led to the favorable investment opportunities that we have right now. And we also continue to maximize investment opportunities through the local government investment pool, as well as other opportunities that present themselves, and we continue to maintain a healthy cash flow. Are there any questions?
Any questions, school board members? I'm looking for hands again. Either raise it electronically or just raise your hand. And I don't see any. I had just one, and maybe I looked back, I didn't see this line item before, but under revenues, beginning fund balance, just under there is restricted fund balance. Did you address that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That is a result of a suggestion that our auditor made in concluding the FY 21-22 audit. There, over the previous 5 years or so, reserves have been set aside for PERS. This is the result of kind of an accounting change or a suggestion. It's really in the presentation. It was previously recorded as a liability, but our auditors suggested that we move it to be reflected as ending fund balance or as fund balance, which we have done. But I thought it was important to reflect that as restricted ending fund balance, as the purpose of what had been set aside over the previous years was specifically for future PERS rate increases. I'm sorry, you may be muted.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Great report.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is discussion of the authorization to purchase K-2 flexible classroom furniture and developmentally appropriate materials. I welcome Administrator on Special Assignment, Student Success, Joel Stewart, for this agenda item. Welcome back, Joel.
Thank you and good evening. I am coming to you tonight to grant authorization to enter into a contract to purchase developmentally appropriate classroom furniture for K-2 from Lakeshore to not exceed $300,000. The source of these funds will be student investment accounts. And if you remember last year at the same time we came to you, so this is a continuation to continue that work within our classrooms to do so. So this would include things like wobble seats, lap desk, table for two, a low table, a low chair with a back to it, wobble cushion, or a standing desk. As we know, tailoring our educational environment to meet our individual needs is vital to our district, and this provides opportunities for students to be included where maybe they did not feel a part, and it is that whole inclusivity is something that is valued, and this will help with those efforts. So it is a discussion item that I'm bringing forward to you today.
Thank you. Any discussion, board? Question? I'd love to see some of that furniture, so maybe I'll schedule a tour. I don't see anything, so this will come back at our next board meeting then for action. Thank you, Joel. School calendars. I welcome Chief of Staff Tiffany Sharman for this agenda item.
Good evening, all. Tiffany Shireman here tonight. I am thankful for the opportunity of bringing forward some of our planning for next school year. So this is the 2023-2024, which is hard to believe I'm even saying those numbers, but 2023-2024 school year calendars. I'm not seeking any action tonight. This is for discussion. A couple of pieces that I think are very important, and while not different than in a lot of years past, I do think bringing right into the room some of the pieces that go into the development of the calendar. There are many opinions every year. You can imagine lots of thoughts and lots of feelings about the calendar. We do try to drive this back, though, to some very key priorities, and I'll walk us through that. So the proposed calendars in the board packet reflect a full school year, including 193 contract days. The kinds of days on the calendar in terms of teacher work days, in-service days, go through a separate process. That's through a negotiation process and is outside of the realm of this particular work. This is work about taking the kinds of days and making sure that we make a compliant calendar that is actually better than compliant. It meets students' needs. It meets all of our community needs the best we can. So as we walk through here, many considerations come into play when developing the calendar. And I do want to walk us through that this calendar is designed to align to district goals and objectives related to quality educational services. Whenever possible, there's K-12 alignment of non-contact days for students so that whenever possible, a family will have children from all levels out of school at the same time. And district transportation and nutritional services programs are maximized by a minimal number of days where there's only 1 or 2 levels attending school. We apply the North Clackamas equity lens throughout the calendar development in various stages and at different times. Considering the perspectives of all of our community members, and that's community with a capital C. A lot of people outside of just parents and students, of course, are impacted by this calendar. Everyone from people who are part-time staff, how the calendar plays out, to business owners who may be employing students or parents and families. Awareness of other school districts and higher educational institutions' vacations, consideration regarding cultural and religious holidays and observances. Whenever possible, we do make the placement of teacher work days and in-service days. We try to maintain as many 5-day weeks of instruction as possible. At high school and middle school, we work to make each grading period as close as possible to the same number of days. Whenever possible, middle school and high school align their day 1s and day 2s. The way student calendars work for high school and middle school, they have days 1 and day 2, or day A and B, depending on who you're referring to and how they talk about the days. Whenever possible, the placement of teacher work days and in-service days aligned to the end of grading periods. That allows our teachers to, of course, do important work that they have around assessment and scoring. Provision of instructional hours that meet or exceed state requirements. That is part of Division 22, of course, that you hear a report about annually from us. Prior to bringing these proposed calendars to the board, representatives from each employee group provided feedback on an initial draft. That meeting also included a review of the considerations above that I just discussed: neighboring school districts' calendars, university calendars, multicultural holiday and observances dates. And then additionally, the proposed calendars reviewed for 2 other things: alignment to our collective bargaining agreements, make sure that we're all aligned, and then also some attention to something requested by students, which is to be attentive to the temperature outside and the temperature then inside, and how that translates to inside. So we look at average temperatures in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th weeks of June and in the end of August, and try to use that to help influence our decision-making around some of the dates that we start school or end school. Upon approval by this board, the 23-24 calendars will be shared broadly with the North Clackamas School District community in multiple languages. And also school administrators and school administrative assistants are provided with a comprehensive calendar of multicultural holidays and observances to be mindful of when they're planning events at the school sites. That's what I have for you tonight. You do have an elementary proposed calendar and then a single middle school, high school, as we now have an aligned middle school, high school calendar. I'm of course available for questions along with the rest of our instructional team, and we'll be looking for action. What we tend to tell families is prior to spring break. So that would be our March meeting.
Okay. Great. This is not an easy task. You fulfilled a lot of demands. So any questions, comments from board members?
Just one question. So
Okay.
in October,
ahead.
I see it just says SC for school closed. Is there do we know why? I mean,
Sure.
Is it a contract day or it's not
It is.
Indigenous Peoples Day, I don't think.
Thanks for asking, Director McVeigh. In Oregon, there's a term called the Oregon Statewide In-Service Day. It's when a lot of professional organizations provide professional development. And for us, it is a day in the NCEA, NCSD agreement that school will be closed so that teachers or other staff can participate if they'd like.
I'm just wondering why the 13th says SC instead of T.
Because it's a non-paid school closed day by the contract, it isn't a paid professional development day where that happens within the district.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Director Ford?
Yeah, I know this is, calendaring in my family is a nightmare, so I can't imagine doing it across these different levels. So thank you for the work on this. I do have a question about the January calendar returning back to school after the winter break. Because I think we got a lot of feedback this year about it being inconsistent across the grade levels, and I see it's happening again. So can you just give an explanation why that was done that way?
I can. I'm not positive about the feedback that you received, so I may need some more clarity on that.
Yeah. So as I see here, the elementary school goes back on that Tuesday, but then middle school and high school don't go back on that Tuesday, or maybe it's flipped. I need to look at it again. But somebody's going back, and
I'm following you.
Yeah,
I'm following you.
Yeah.
So our elementary schools do have 6 more additional teacher in service and work days. So there will be 6 days throughout the year, at least 6 days throughout the year, where elementary will be out when middle and high aren't. And in working together with our elementary partners, that seemed to be a favorable day and time.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions?
I think
I
just
appreciate-
a comment on, let me find it here. All right, I'm on elementary. SC means, let's see. So it seems like, back to Director Ford's comment, it seems like the elementary were asking for a day to get ready after winter break, and that was a big issue. Is that ringing a bell?
It's certainly one of the reasons for placing it there instead of perhaps later in January someday. We tend to have one teacher in service day roughly each month at elementary, and it would make sense then to go ahead and allow that as opposed to maybe breaking up a week later. We also try to stagger when those teacher work days are in the week at elementary so that students don't miss the same PE or music courses. If your 2nd grade class takes PE on Fridays and you always have a teacher work day on a Friday, then a student misses PE on all of those. Whereas this is a Tuesday, and there is no perfect solution, I guess.
So is that Monday teacher work day, or is it school closed?
School closed, staff not required to be present.
Okay,
The first, yes.
although probably half our teachers will show up and get ready.
To be fair,
They're so committed to their classroom, but anyway, thank you for that.
of course, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I like the little triangle for the first day and last day. It really stood out.
Good.
That was something new. So thank you for that.
Not the angel devil.
No. Oh, sorry.
Hey,
The
I was a
agenda-
student once. I remember
Yeah.
the last day of school.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one. Technology E-rate award, that will be rescheduled for future meeting. Agenda item 10, contract award ventilation systems filters. This is for discussion only. I welcome Assistant Superintendent of Operations, Cindy Ditchin, for this agenda item.
Thank you, Chair. This is coming to you as a newer item, although it is something we spend money on annually. It's the first time we will hit that $150,000 mark, in which requires board approval. These are for the filters that we put in our ventilation systems. And as you will recall, during COVID, a lot of recommendations changed, and we had significant retrofits done to our systems to allow this higher grade filter. This is great for ventilation. It's great for keeping our schools healthy and the people inhabiting those spaces as well. However, they are much more expensive and we have to replace them much more frequently. So we are going to hit that $150,000 mark before the year is out. And once we do that in a calendar year, I need to bring that forward. So this is the same company we've used for a few years. We vetted those companies a couple of years ago, got new bids, especially since we went up to that higher grade filter. And they are absolutely giving us the best deal. We're happy with their service, and the supply chain has caught up. So we're getting them on a more regular basis, which is also great news. So that's why this is before you. I wouldn't typically bring our typical yearly supplies, but it's an expensive item for sure. Happy to address any questions should there be any.
Any questions, board? Yeah, I wondered why. So thank you for explaining that. Is this something you need for approval as soon as possible? I'm just curious.
This one is not. We are just at about $114,000 currently spent. So by the time we get our next order in mid-spring, we might get close to that 150. We'll definitely hit it before the end of the school year. So we're bringing it to you now, just in case, but another month certainly won't put us behind.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so moving on then to our last, I believe this is our, no, there's more. Contract award. Maybe this is our last name. For discussion only. Also, this is for you, Assistant Superintendent of Operations, tennis court replacements.
Yeah, this is kind of an exciting one that we're able to expend some of the last tiny percentages of our 2016 capital construction bond dollars. We were hesitant to spend all of that down while we are still going through some of the warranty phases and some other things within all of our bond purchases and rebuilds in the last few years. But now we've done a full assessment of those funds that are remaining, and our tennis courts at 3 of our locations are screaming to be replaced, to the point of wide cracks and weeds growing through and are no longer playable in some cases. Our courts, I think it should be noted, are not only used by our high school tennis teams, they're used by our PE classes on a routine basis, and they are definitely a community asset, ones that people will swing by and play on the weekends, but also ones that we can rent out for things like tennis tournaments and whatnot. So we're excited for this one. It'll give our high schools more competitive play. It'll give our community a much needed upgrade to this asset. And since we have the dollars left in our bond, which did allow for athletic improvements, we thought this was a good use of those funds. So this is to replace the tennis courts at Alder Creek Middle School, Clackamas High School, and Rex Putnam High School.
Any questions, board?
No questions, but a comment just to support this. I mean, if you drive by Rao, you'll see how beautiful it is since they've been replaced. They're just such a part of the community in the summertime. And early in the morning, there's community members playing tennis. It's mostly retired folks, but those are people that have supported our budgets and our levies and our bonds over and over again. They're appreciative of it. It just is tennis courts can be a real eyesore because they do crack and they do grow weeds. We all have sidewalks that have the same thing, and it just looks absolutely beautiful on Rao's campus. And I just hope all of our campuses can get a refresh for these. I know a lot of people don't think about tennis courts much, but they do make a difference.
Director Ford.
Yeah, I know that I would agree with you, Director McVeigh. I think that they're huge for our community. I mean, all of our outdoor spaces that are open to community are important and really bring relevancy to why, the contributions that individuals make are important, right? It's not just about the students in the school, it's about the whole community. I do have a question about when these close, because obviously we'll also take away an area during the time of construction. Like, what is our plan in terms of signage? Is there a way that we can add signage on where other North Clackamas tennis courts are available so folks can know that, we're being intentional, we're not forgetting that people do use them, but here's some other alternatives?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we did learn a lot from closing down the tennis courts at Rao previously. And we have added courts for Nelson High School. So we do have some additional assets in our district, as you know. There will be plenty of signage prior to them closing, so people have a heads up and they know. We've already informed our local partners, Parks and Rec, for instance, who might hold tennis tournaments in the summer. So that'll happen after this spring's tennis season. We'll allow our high schools to have tennis season on those. In some cases, that'll be a rough go, but it's one last season that they'll have to endure some of those. And so starting in June, I don't have an exact schedule. We need to get this bidded, and then we'll get an exact schedule. I don't know if they'll be able to do multiple at once, or if they'll do one for a 3-week time period and move on to the next and move on to the next. So I'm awaiting that schedule.
Any other questions? Good points, good comments. This probably needs to move pretty quick then.
It does. We have a little bit of wiggle room. So at an upcoming meeting, we could make this work.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was great. And we hope to move on that soon then. I think we've come to the end of our meeting. Thank you Ford for being here. And also getting the opportunity to understand these items, these important items on our agenda tonight. This allows us to make more knowledgeable decisions about our staff and our students. Thank you, staff, for your hard work and in the preparation of your reports. And thanks to all the community that showed up tonight to listen and learn. It's now 8:17. And I would like to adjourn this work session meeting of North Clackamas School District Board of Directors. Have a good evening and stay warm.
Yep, you too. Thank you.
Good night.